All right. Well, in the interest of time, we'll go ahead and officially welcome you all to our overview about micro-internships. Now, for those of you who might be new to the concept, maybe you've never even heard about a micro-internship before, don't worry. You're in the right place. We'll talk about what they are in just a moment, as well as how you can get started with taking full advantage of these opportunities on the Parker Dewey platform, and more importantly, how you can position yourself to be as successful as possible in securing these opportunities. So my name is Kristen Schrader, and I oversee our partnerships team, which basically means that I get to work with hundreds of colleges and universities all across the country who are really excited about sharing these opportunities with their students, with their recent graduates, and just providing you all with yet another opportunity for professional development. So thank you for taking the time. Now, a couple of housekeeping things. First of all, I know that my attention span is pretty limited when it comes to watching webinars, so I'm going to try to move pretty quickly here. I would encourage those of you, if you do have questions, throw them in the chat. That will slow me down, but as I'm not hearing from you, I'll assume you're good to go, and you are maybe multitasking, but hopefully are learning what you need to know. That if you do have questions, use the chat. I will be monitoring that all throughout the presentation. Also, if you miss something, or if you're curious to see these slides again, there are a bunch of links within the slides, as well as just some information that you may want to reference later on. Awesome. Know that we will be sending those to you within the next 24 hours. So stay tuned. You don't need to take screenshots or anything like that unless you want to. We will provide you with this information later on. Also, if you have to hop out for whatever reason, again, we'll be sending you the recording and the slides so you can check in at a later time. All right, without any further ado, let me introduce you to a few students. And perhaps some of these students' stories and experiences might resonate with you. Legend, for instance, being filtered out based on his GPA, especially early on in his college experience. Or Adila in the upper right corner, a student athlete who already had graduated, had an MBA, but just real struggling to launch her career because maybe she just didn't have quite the resume to support all of her professional experiences. Yera in the bottom left, couldn't afford to do unpaid work. She was juggling work, school, and a lot of other things while also pursuing her doctorate. And just couldn't afford to just do anything unpaid. Darren, so many different options with his marketing degree. Which should he choose? And he just, he only has so many hours in the day to explore. And then finally, Noel in the corner, in the bottom right corner. He was struggling to make connections at a career fair. He had a great resume, but how do you really introduce yourself? How do you make that inroad at those sorts of events? So I've got the poll on the screen, and appreciate those of you who are doing the homework, because it's great to kind of get a sense of who's in the room. What I'm seeing based on your feedback is some of you are saying, I've been applying, I don't get selected, I can't afford to do something unpaid, I don't know what I want to do. All of these reasons are really, really valid points and questions and comments that we hear from lots and lots and lots of students every single day. And we're really excited to share micro-internships with you, because those certainly do help to address many of the challenges that you're bringing up in the poll. So that being said, let's talk a little bit about what a micro-internship is. Short-term, paid, professional projects designed for college students and recent grads to help you launch your career. Now, let me unpack a few things there, because there's a lot into that definition. First of all, as you can see, short-term means these are projects. Think of what you would do during an internship or even that first job after you've graduated, but a discrete project. In a summer internship, those of you who may have just completed one, you probably did 5, 10 or so different projects, especially if your internship lasted for the whole duration of the summer. This would be taking one of those projects and just having the micro-internship be just that. When it says 10 to 40 hours, that's not per week or anything like that. That's for the whole project. And it's usually broken into maybe a few days to a few weeks in order to complete that full project. Second point, though, is critical. These are all paid opportunities. Why? Well, because we fundamentally just don't believe that it's fair or right to ask students to work and not be paid. It's one of our core beliefs here at Parker Dewey. While an unpaid internship or other experience might be a valuable learning opportunity, it's not accessible for those of us who can't afford to do unpaid work. And again, here at Parker Dewey, we just believe that opportunities like a micro-internship should be accessible or available to as many students as possible, even those who cannot afford to do something unpaid. So every single opportunity on Parker Dewey is paid. Now, it is paid a fixed fee, meaning that when you're seeing the prices on the Parker Dewey platform, and we'll look at this more in just a moment, you will see the full amount that you'll be paid for that full project. So you can kind of do the math and get a sense of what the hourly rate might be, but don't really pay that much attention to that, because if it's a 10-hour project, for example, then that means that whether it takes you 9 hours or 11 hours or whatever, that's what you'll be paid upon completion. And yes, we hear from students all the time who are able to complete the projects more quickly than what the posting might be. But we also hear that students that might say, yeah, I was selected for a project, it's a little outside of my area of expertise. I needed to do a little bit more background research on the help menu and whatever tool or whatever, and it might take them a little bit longer. My advice, don't calculate your time in these situations, because not only is nobody asking you to turn in a timesheet, but it's also not a good use of time. Focus on executing the project to the very best of your ability. Third point, professional. The kinds of experiences that you're finding here are not going to be things like babysit my kids, paint my house, walk my dog. There's other places to go if you're looking for that kind of work. This isn't it. This is designed to be, yes, gig work, but for early career professionals, students, folks who are looking for opportunities to build their resume, to have a few more bullet points that they can talk about, to then leverage to an internship or a full-time role. Let me kind of rephrase that last bit that I just said a little bit differently. We do not want you to be micro-interns for forever. Our goal with this is that this be a valuable learning and professional development opportunity for you, so that you can hopefully go from micro-intern to intern, full-time employee, or wherever it is that you want to go, and that this be a helpful stepping stone for you. Maybe the next opportunity will be with the organization that you did the micro-internship with, and if so, awesome. But you also might discover through that micro-internship that that experience, that project, that line of work isn't really what you want to do. Also awesome, because instead of it being something that you just had to dedicate your whole summer to doing, or that first job where you may have gone through multiple rounds of interviews and maybe gave up opportunities where you could have taken a better fitting job, that's not the case here. These are short-term projects, and sometimes it can be just as valuable to learn what you don't want to do as to learn what you do. Last few things I want to mention here is that these are designed to be flexible opportunities. You'll see projects in a variety of different industries, all different areas of an organization, and really posted flexibly throughout the year. Other things to know too is that most of these projects are remote. And this isn't some sort of newfangled COVID thing. Parker Dewey has been around since 2015. We've been doing thousands of micro-internships over the past 7 years. And doing these remotely is not anything new to us. We saw this well before the pandemic. But certainly companies are more interested in remote work now, and there's never been any more opportunities on the Parker Dewey platform than what you're seeing and continue to see as time goes on. And know that this is a very dynamic space. If you go onto whatever job board that your school might be using, chances are some of those are internships that aren't even going to start until next summer. Nothing wrong with that, but the opportunities that you see here is just a very, very different timeline. Micro-internships tend to get posted and filled very, very quickly, like within a day or two in some cases. Sometimes it might be a couple of weeks, but it's very quick. Also know that opportunities are posted literally every single day. And so you may go on the platform now, maybe you'll find something you like, maybe you won't. I'd recommend though, if you are interested in a project, apply right away, because chances are it may already be filled, or candidates may be already in that review process if you wait even a day or so. So what are we what kinds of experiences are we talking about? Well, it's a wide variety, and you can certainly check out our project library on our website if that's something that's of interest to you, which gives you dozens of different examples of projects that we've seen over and over again. The 6 examples that you see here are some of the most common. We'll see projects like drafting articles, maybe for a blog, maybe for an academic type of paper. Maybe we've had students do book reviews, book chapter editing, etc. A lot of these projects are research-based, competitive analysis. It might be a startup that's looking for what other organizations in its space is doing. Tons and tons of projects revolve around social media content. Maybe it's developing new content, creating content calendars. You name the platform, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, you get the idea. A lot of things on TikTok as well. And it might also be something where it's, again, like a competitive analysis of a social media campaign or measuring the effectiveness of a social media campaign, et cetera. A lot of things also in the IT space, whether it be app development, website development, or even if you're a lot less technical than that, and maybe you're just interested in website design, there's projects around updating a website where it may not be as important that you're super well familiar with the IT world. And lead generation, data cleansing, there's lots and lots of projects like those where you don't have to have any functional area of expertise in those particular subject matters. Those are research projects that really involve a strong attention to detail, strong written communication skills, and skills that students across all different majors are honing throughout your academic program. One question I get quite a bit is what academic year, what year are students doing these? Really begins as early as freshman year. In fact, we had a student do a micro-internship this summer who completed her project before she even walked onto campus. It was the summer between her senior year of high school and her freshman year of college. And we also see students who do these after they've graduated. And there's a wide variety of expertise levels that we see with these different projects. Some of these projects, I read the descriptions and I think, what the heck are they talking about? I would know that I would not be a good fit for applying for that project. While others, you might say, yeah, I could do that. And maybe if it's not something that's of interest to you, again, don't apply. But if you do find some things, yeah, I could do that. Yeah, I have the time. Well, that's the opportunity that you may want to throw your hat in and apply for. And hopefully these benefits are pretty obvious. Students are doing these for a variety of reasons. Maybe it's because I think there was a few folks in the poll that said, I don't have transportation. I'd love to do an internship, but I can't get there. Again, these are mostly remote. They're doing it as a way to differentiate themselves, put on their resume, so that they have something to talk about when going to that career fair later on this month or this fall. They're using it as a way to explore careers. Maybe you picked your major, but you have absolutely no idea what that major is. Join the club. I was a human resources major, had no idea. The reason I picked it was my dad said they never seem to get fired, or if they do, it was because they're the last ones to be fired, because they're the ones doing the firing. I thought, okay, whatever that means, and went on my way. Now, it turned out to be a good fit for me, but I only really solidified that decision after I had some chances to get some experience in it. And this is what a micro-internship can hopefully allow you to do, to be able to determine, is this really a good fit for me before you even make those higher stakes decisions, like where am I going to intern? Or maybe you came back from your internship and realized, this isn't really what I want to do. Okay, no problem. We have a really great success story on our website, and I'll put this in the chat in case that would be helpful to you, of a student who came back from his internship and just had that big aha moment of, wow, yeah, this isn't what I want to do. And he ended up getting a micro-internship with a very an IT streaming platform that you'll be able to read about in the program. I guarantee you all have heard of it. And so it's pretty cool to just, again, use that as a stepping stone to then start his pivot towards what he wants to do longer term. And of course, all of these different benefits are on top of the fact that you're getting paid. A couple of eligibility things just to bring up to your attention. First of all, you have to be at least 18. That goes to US labor law. When you're a minor, the rules are a little bit different and more complex. So everybody does need to be a legal adult by way of age in order to be eligible. This is open to students and alumni. It is open to international students as well as undocumented students, assuming that you have the appropriate work authorization if you're an international student, or if you're an undocumented student, that you have a valid international tax ID number. And for undocumented students, this includes those of you who do not have DACA. And again, there's a lot of ways I could get into the weeds on this. For the sake of time, I am going to just go ahead and move on. If you do have specific questions about any of these specific eligibility criteria, I definitely recommend that you go to your international student office if you are an international student. And certainly you're welcome to reach out to our team as well. We're happy to help however we can. So how does it work? Well, 3 easy steps. And we'll talk about each of these in greater detail in a moment, but keep in mind that behind the scenes, Parker Dewey's role is to help make sure that things are going as smoothly as possible, both for you and for the organization that you'll be working with on the micro-internship. So behind the scenes, for instance, we're vetting the projects. Are they paid fairly? Are they professional? We're handling all of the admin in terms of payroll, et cetera, and I'll talk more about that in a moment as well. And then we're providing you with just some guidance. Perhaps this is your first opportunity doing this kind of work. Maybe this is your first time doing like a real world professional experience in the first place. And if so, awesome. This is exactly what a micro-internship was designed to do, is to give you that professional stepping stone, but with some training wheels, which is why Parker Dewey is here to help behind the scenes so that you are able to, for instance, get questions around what sort of resources, et cetera, should I be using or referring to? Again, that's what we're here for. Now, there was a question that came up in case you missed it. Yes, we are recording this and are happy to send the link to the recording afterwards. So no worries in case you missed that part of the session. So step number 1, create an account. Pretty easy. If you go to parkerdewey.com, in the upper right corner, you'll see a link where it can say create an account, apply for projects. You may also have heard about micro-internships from your school. And if so, you can click on the school branded link that you see that was provided to you by your school. Either way, it's going to lead you to what you see in front of you on the screen, which is where you can click view and apply for the micro-internship, fill in some basic contact information, and then you can click create my account. If you already have an account, click on the blue sign in button at the bottom right corner. You can see that in the screenshot, and make sure that you enter whatever login credentials that you used at that time. Now, a couple questions that do come up. Email. You can use your school email, and I would recommend that if you're checking it regularly. I did a session just last night with a school that specifically said, you know what, we don't keep our student email very long after we've graduated. And if that's the case for you, or maybe you're not sure if you're getting close to graduation and how long you'll be able to keep your email, you may want to think about transitioning your life away from your student email towards something else that you plan to use after you've graduated. Either way, you can create your account on Parker Dewey, and you can always change your email at any time. So know that this isn't a hard and fast decision that you have to commit to for forever. Also know, though, that whatever email address that you're using is one that you really want to make sure you're checking regularly. So whether it's your school email or something else, it should be an email that you're checking daily. We had a situation with a student who signed up for Parker Dewey, applied for a project, and was selected for a project all within a few hours. The only problem was the student doesn't check her email all that often. And we found out about this because the next day, the company that picked her for the project actually called us and said, hey, I really want to work with this student, but I haven't heard from her. Well, we called the student and said, hey, this is the situation. And the student said, oh my gosh, thank you, excited to work on the project, haven't checked my email. So again, with anything related to your job search, both with micro-internships or just in general, definitely if you're in the job market applying to stuff, check your email regularly so that you're not missing out on opportunities. And then again, this is what it looks like when you are applying for different projects. Now, moving right along here. Next section, real basic information about where you go to school. This is going to be important for a few different reasons. One is it's helpful so that you're seeing all of the different opportunities that you're eligible for. Companies, when they post projects, do have the ability to say that they only want students from certain schools to be able to see that project. So make sure that you're adding not only the school that you currently are attending, but also if you've already graduated from another institution, make sure you're adding that as well, just so that you're, again, seeing all the projects that you might be eligible for. We're also going to ask you for your location and your hometown. And the reason for that is for companies who are interested in using micro-internships as a way to identify students for a longer-term position. We hear regularly from organizations that have that as one of their objectives, that they want to connect with a student who's local or who might be located close to or have some sort of connection to one of their main locations. And the reason for that is they want to make sure that, hey, we're gonna have to move you, or would you be open to moving to these locations, et cetera. If you already are there or have a connection to that location, that can be helpful to these different organizations. Last piece too is if you are an international student, do make sure that you check the box at the bottom that says you're not a US citizen. And just so you know the background there, most micro-internships are open to students regardless of if they're a US citizen or not. But we do have a handful of organizations that do make it a requirement to be a US citizen. And I'll give you one specific example is Northrop Grumman. They're a major government contractor that has done tons of micro-internships with us. And they're using micro-internships as a way to identify students who might be a good fit for their internship and full-time roles, both of which require US citizenship. And the reason for that is because of the government contracts that these individuals will be working on. And so that's the reason why we asked that question and know that that's the information there. When it comes to demographics, is the last section that you'll be completing in that initial section when you are first setting up your account. And just basic information, gender, race, etc. You do have the option to select prefer not to disclose for every single one of these. But I do want to address why we're asking this. First of all, it goes to Parker Dewey's mission, which is to try to help ensure that micro-internships are accessible to students regardless of their background. And that's one of the things that we track and measure very, very carefully on our team. But the other thing you should know about this is that this is not visible to anybody outside of the Parker Dewey team. We do not share it with your school, and we certainly do not share it with any employers if they're evaluating your candidacy for this micro-internship. So it's, again, just used internally by the Parker Dewey team so that we can measure how effectively we're meeting our goals in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then the last section is the affiliations box, where if you work with or are part of a nonprofit organization that we've partnered with dozens of organizations like the Dream.us, which is for supporting undocumented students, or an organization called Bottom Line, which focuses on supporting first-generation students in various locations, et cetera. These are organizations that are actively sharing micro-internships with their students. And so if you're part of any of those organizations, you can click on the link, type in the name, and see if it comes up. But make sure you add those to your profile, because that too may open some additional micro-internship opportunities for you. There's a couple of general categories that may also be relevant to you. For example, if you're a student athlete, if you're an honor student, or if you're a veteran. Those are three additional categories that we have that, again, might be relevant. The reason we ask those is, again, you can voluntarily disclose that. However, that does come up with a lot of conversations that we have with companies who specifically want to post micro-internships for students from your community. A question that came through, so have you noticed if recent grads are less likely to be selected? Absolutely not. That's something that a lot of companies are excited about, because recent grads oftentimes have more experience that might be relevant, but also you might be more able to work longer term. And many companies are using micro-internships as a way to audition students for that longer term role. But usually when a company is specifically looking for somebody for a long-term role, they'll say that in the description. And they might say that they're looking for somebody for an internship or for a full-time role that's going to start on XYZ date. So you can read that when you're reading the project description. But no, in general, it certainly is a strong number of students that we see regularly. And then you'll see in the chat, my colleague is listing a couple of examples of some of the students that we specifically met with to hear about their experience, and they are recent graduates. So in case you're curious, you can check those out. Now, you can always keep on adding to your profile. I definitely recommend it. There's a few sections that we didn't specifically talk about, like your experience section and your resume, etc. Do make sure you complete your profile as much as you possibly can. So a professional photo, make sure that you're adding a concise personal statement. Think of what you would say in LinkedIn that just summarizes your background and what it is that you're looking for. The experience section, that's a very general catch-all kind of section, meaning that you can put where you've worked, your extracurricular experiences, volunteering, internships, part-time jobs, full-time jobs, again, eclectic, and you can populate it with as much or little of those experiences as you'd like. Your resume, pretty self-explanatory, but you are able to upload one version of your resume. So make sure it's a generic one that would appeal to a wide variety of organizations, because if you apply to multiple micro-internships, those organizations will have the ability to see your resume, and it's going to be the same resume whether you apply to one micro-internship or 100. We'll talk more about what the employers can see in a minute, so stay tuned. Also know on the documents section, that's one last section you can fill out, this is a chance for you to upload samples of your work. And so as you think about what kinds of projects you might be interested in, try to upload samples of your work that relate to those different projects. That way the company can make sure that you do have relevant experience, as that might be important to some of those organizations. Now, the fun part, when you're looking at the different projects. So when you first create your account, you'll then see the opportunities that are currently available. And so I'm going to walk through each of these three different screenshots, starting with the left side. That's the first thing you'll see, which lists all of the different projects that are currently available on Parker Dewey. Now, you might see at the very top a section that says featured projects. And the reason you'll see that is if that particular organization who posted the project specifically said that they only want students from certain schools or from certain affiliations or organizations to see it. So they listed that because probably your school, or again, maybe your affiliation. Now, you might log in though, and it'll immediately say all open micro-internships. And then that means that all of those projects are open to all students, and you can apply to any of the ones that you see. You won't see any featured projects that you're not eligible to see based on your school or affiliation. Now, if you do see some featured projects and they interest you, I would recommend that you look at those carefully and consider applying for those first. Since they're not open to everybody, it's going to be less competition for applying for those projects versus those that are open to everybody. Regardless though, whatever projects that interest you, you can click details and read more about it. The description of the project, the description of the company, the start date, due date, and all of those different things. And then if you're interested from there, you can click apply, and that's where you'll see the questions that the company wants you to answer in order to apply for the project. Now, there's always at least one question, which is essentially, why should we pick you? And then the other questions that you might see are added by that organization because they specifically want you to answer a few more things before you apply for that project. Now, a lot of great questions coming through here. Let me go ahead and see what we got here. If the logo is grayed out, does it mean that it's not available? Good question, and no, it just means that that company chose not to upload a logo at that time. Occasionally, we do have companies that, for confidentiality reasons, may not disclose that if they are doing a project on behalf of one of their client companies or what have you, there might be something that is generic, or they may not choose to disclose the specific organization logo. But more often than not, the reason there's no logo is because the company may be so new that they don't have one yet. So again, a lot of different reasons. If the students don't see an organization but would like to do an internship with that organization, can Parker Dewey create an internship opportunity? So yeah, we constantly see new companies engage with the platform and post projects, but we've actually had students come to us and said, hey, I got this project, got this internship or whatever, and I need help with like the payroll and that sort of thing. So that's something where the student essentially creates their own internship or micro-internship in this case, and then we help out with the payroll and et cetera. And so those are things that we can certainly help offline so that there's not like there's any competition for that particular project since you've already been selected for it. Good question around projects posted that has a start date. Is that still open? Yes. Few different reasons for why that's happening. Most often, the reason is because the company is reviewing candidates already, and maybe they've even selected one or more students already, but they're leaving it open to accept additional student applicants while they review those different candidates. So that happens all the time. Sometimes too, the plans may have shifted and they just need to update that posting. We do follow up with these organizations literally every day to make sure that this opportunity is still viable. And if a company is no longer interested in filling the project, it will be canceled and no longer appear on the site. Let's see. This particular question around, I applied for an internship on September 16th, which is tomorrow. Okay, I'm not sure what the date is there, but it says under the applied section, you haven't applied to any. Yeah, we're actually going to address that, Randy, in just a moment. So stay tuned on that one. I had some internships I applied to and they disappeared. Again, similar question as Randy. If you're seeing a project that's no longer showing up on your applied list, that means that you weren't selected for that particular project or that the company has filled all of the available seats that they intended to fill at that point. Now, they may open the project up to additional students. We actually just saw that happen with a company that had 30 some odd projects open at the same time, and their original plan was to only choose one or two. Well, they were so impressed by the applicant pool that they actually chose 4 apiece, and we're actually processing those today. So it does happen that organizations' plans change and they may add additional opportunities.
If I could jump in with a follow-up to Samantha's question, and Samantha too, if you're interested in a company and maybe you haven't made a connection with that company yet, but the way you'd like to engage with that company is via a micro-internship, you'd be welcome to let us know that too. Now, while we can't make a guarantee, what we could do is potentially try to reach out to that company and say, hey, company XYZ, students are saying this is a way that they would love to engage with you. So if you wanted to let us know, again, we can't make any guarantees, but we would be happy to share that interest with companies because there's still a number out there that may not be aware of micro-internships as an option. So you expressing that interest helps us nudge them into posting a project.
Awesome. Thank you, Danielle. All right, so a lot of great questions, and I just answered another one in the chat. For the sake of time, feel free to keep adding questions in the chat, but I'm going to go ahead and keep moving on because some of your questions we're going to get to in just a short little bit. Do want to keep it in mind, though, all these details on the sidebar of every single project description, they're all pretty important. So make sure you're reading that carefully, the start dates, due dates, the hours, etc. All of that is very transparently in front of you for the helps of your planning purposes. So you can, for instance, get an idea of, okay, this is the month in this particular example when I'd be expected to work. And you might think, okay, that's probably not a great time because of midterms or what. That can help you decide whether or not that project is a good fit for you. Another question that does come up when it says 20 hours, that doesn't mean per week or anything like that. It means roughly it's expected you to take 20 hours to complete that project, in this case, throughout that month that the project was posted for. It might be that you're doing 4 to 5 hours a week. It might be something where you're doing 10 hours one week and 10 hours towards the end. Again, it's going to be up to you and that project supervisor to figure out the specific timeline and the specific check-in points for that particular project. But know that the start date, due date, et cetera, those are going to be important as you consider your abilities and availability for that project. Also know when it says remote, obviously that means that you don't really have to worry about geography. And usually in those cases, the company is saying, okay, you can work whenever you want and your own schedule, et cetera. If it is an on-site project, though, it will say that, and you'll see the location and the top line of the project description, or of the project right next to the name of the project. But for on-site projects, again, there's not that many of them, but it's pretty important that you pay attention to that. So again, keep that in mind. Sometimes on-site projects might turn into more of a hybrid type of project where it might be you have to come on-site for a meeting or two, but then you can work remotely. Again, it's usually in the project description, but that's something that you can talk through when you're selected for the project about how often you would need to be there, et cetera. A question around the desired skills. So as the name implies, desired, they want and are looking for folks who have those skills and backgrounds. It's not required, but it is something that if you don't have a skill that's listed in that project description, might be something that you may not want to consider that particular project. or it might be something where it might take you a little bit of extra time to execute the project so that you can familiarize yourself with that particular opportunity and so on. And Samantha, I'm going to go ahead. There's a question around, again, she has some questions with sponsorship, et cetera. We'll share with you our email addresses so we can take the conversation offline, because it sounds like they're getting a little specific here, and we'd be happy to help and answer. I just, again, don't want to address it en masse since it's a very individual situation. So the question around how can you fill out the questions to make your application stand out? Raj, perfect timing and a perfect segue, as these are two specific examples of two students who applied to the exact same micro-internship. Both of these students applied for a project with a medical device company that was interested in using that micro-internship as a way to find a student who would be a good fit for their full-time role in their sales department and part of their sales development management program. So that being said, Emma clearly said in the beginning, I have a passion for medical device sales, et cetera. Very carefully worded her responses, clearly indicated her level of interest, her experiences that relate to the project, and so on. Wyatt, on the other hand, while nothing terribly bad about his answers, didn't have quite the level of detail. And speaking of detail, if you look at the last response, you'll see I am interested in the possibility of a full, again, good answer, except he misspelled interested. And those are the small things that make a big, big difference when it comes to your ability to be successful with these micro-internships. If I could say any mistakes that I see, and I look at these responses literally every day, it's things like what Wyatt did, where it's a simple typo. Another mistake Wyatt's making is being too generic. Instead of just saying I have experience cold calling and door-to-door sales, elaborate on that. For example, or maybe you did something in class that relates to the project. Great. Give an example, talk about that class project that you did, or better yet, upload it as a document in your profile and mention that you have some examples of your work in the document section of your Parker Dewey profile. The other big problem I see a lot is copying and pasting. I actually saw a student's profile a few weeks ago. She had applied to the same, multiple projects, but with the same company. And that she copied and pasted the exact same responses for why she was interested in that project for every single project that she applied to. Now, the big mistake that she made there, other than the fact that you shouldn't do that, is that the company that she was applying for, they have one person who's evaluating all of the students who are applying to their micro-internships. Now, there's no way the student would know that, and that's not always the case. But in this particular case, that means that company saw that the student took the lazy way out by doing a lot of copying and pasting. And it, again, made it so that she wasn't accepted for any of those different projects. And so it was not obviously a good situation. Also, keep in mind, this is what the company sees when they're evaluating students. They will only see your profile if you apply to their project. So we're not a resume database, meaning that if you create an account on Parker Dewey right now, great. But no company can see your profile until you apply to their project. And what they see is literally what you see on that right side screenshot. They'll see your responses to those short answer application questions. They'll see your resume if you chose to upload one. They'll see a link to your LinkedIn or an electronic portfolio or GitHub or whatever you might be using. Again, if you chose to upload that information, but they see those short answer responses first. And that's why those are so critically important, to make sure that you really are carefully crafting your responses there. Now, going back to a few questions that came up earlier, is if you apply to projects, how do you know where you stand? Well, when you're looking at the Parker Dewey platform, there's a few things to keep in mind. First of all, opportunities, that's where all the projects are, the current list of projects that are available right now. Applied, meaning those projects you've already applied to and are still under consideration. And so if you apply to a project and it's no longer listed there, then that means that the company has filled their target number of seats. Now, they may open that project up again and look for more students, in which case it might reappear on that applied section. But chances are that may mean that, okay, you're no longer under consideration for that project. So go back to the opportunities tab and look for some others. When you're selected for a micro-internship and you're currently working on it, that's where those projects that'll appear under hired. And then completed is where you'll see opportunities that have already been completed, micro-internships you've already completed. You can read your feedback there from companies, but that also is a chance for you to essentially build your own micro-internship library of all the different projects that you've worked on over time. Last section is called messages, and that's where you and the company have a chance to communicate with each other before they select you for that particular micro-internship. And so they might reach out to say, hey, could we do a quick interview before to talk about the project or whatever. Most of the time when they're doing when they're evaluating candidates, they will ask you to. They typically don't do interviews. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. If they are requesting an interview, they'll put it in the messages section of the platform. Now, if you get a message from an employer, those will come to you via whatever email that you use to sign up for the platform. So it's not like you have to check Parker Dewey and check the messages all the time. You'll get an email for that particular situation. Now, if you're selected for a micro-internship, first of all, congratulations. But then what happens? Well, you'll find out via email. So again, so important that you check your email. And in that email, we're going to send you a variety of different really important information. First and foremost, the name of the company and the point of contact at that organization and their email address will all be in that initial email. So if you've applied to multiple micro-internships, and maybe you've applied to multiple micro-internships with the same company, great. It'll clarify which project, which company, et cetera, in that email, as well as the point of contact that you'll be working with. We'll then send you a list of suggested next steps. Things like, here's how to sign up for the payroll system that Parker Dewey uses. Here's how to read the review of the terms of service. Here's what to say when you're reaching out to the company, et cetera. So all of that will be in that initial email. What do you do and what do you need to know? Well, my first recommendation to you is to use the email address in that email, that point of contact, and connect with your project supervisor. Send them an email. Say, hey, can we hop on a Zoom call or can we connect? I'm really excited about the project, and we'll give you some language of what you can say in that initial kickoff conversation. While you're on the job at the project, know that you can go back to that project supervisor, ask any sort of clarifying questions and so on. But this is also your chance to really show that you're a professional, that you can handle things on your own. And so this is a great opportunity for you to go back to a professor that maybe you loved their class, maybe you want to visit them in office hours, but you're not really sure what to say. This could be a great reason to go and get their opinion on how you can best approach the project. Or maybe you're working with a mentor or some alumnus that, again, might have some area of expertise that could relate to that project and could give you some valuable insight. We also have a variety of different resources that we'll send to you as well to help you stay on track. Again, if you need help, know that you're not doing this in a vacuum. You have the project supervisor, you have the Parker Dewey team, and we're all here and want you to be successful. So do reach out to our team. We've facilitated thousands of micro-internships, and we're happy to share some best practices and some ideas to help you stay on track. And last of all, most importantly perhaps, when do you get paid? Well, one thing to keep in mind with a micro-internship on Parker Dewey is that Parker Dewey is the employer of record. What does that mean? It means that Parker Dewey will be paying you when the project is completed. That also means that you don't have to worry about playing collections agent or going back to this company and saying, okay, where's my money, or any of that stuff. And it also means that if you do one micro-internship or 100 micro-internships on Parker Dewey, all of that payroll information is going to stay the same. So unless you change bank accounts or want us to route the money to a different place or whatever, you sign up for that payroll system, it's not going to change. You can go ahead and use the same information over time. Also know, again, the pay, you can read some more information on the slide. I've got a bunch of FAQs as well. Pay is processed typically once a month. You can always reach out to our team to request an off-cycle payment if you have completed your project and need some additional assistance. So a few other things to keep in mind while you're working on your project. First and foremost, as I've mentioned a few times already, this is the real world. And so one thing to keep in mind as you're doing your micro-internship is this is your chance to really show the employer that you are a professional, that you have what it takes to be successful and to work independently. So make sure you're putting your best foot forward by making sure that your work is error-free as possible, that you're managing all the appropriate timelines and deadlines and so on. If you do run into some sort of hiccup, maybe you're concerned about being able to meet a deadline, maybe you don't have access to something you need or whatever, this is where you reach out to the project supervisor. If it's some sort of deadline-related issue, loop in Parker Dewey as well. We had a situation a few weeks ago, a student got COVID and ended up in the hospital. And so again, we handle those situations case by case. In a micro-internship, they don't happen too often, but if it does have some sort of hiccup, just let us know so that we can address it, so that you're being treated as fairly as possible, and that the company is as well, and that the project is going to be able to get done to the best of everybody's ability. Also know that this is the real world. The company is paying you real money to do a real project. So again, keep it professional. This is not something where you want to be rather informal or what have you. Make sure you're asking good questions that, by good, I mean ones that if you did a little research on your own, you would be able to find the answer. And in that initial phone call that you have with them, make sure you understand why they need you to do this project in the first place. Again, this is a real world project, so clearly you're going to be adding value to them. So figure out what it is, what the overall objective is, what are the data points, how you'll be measured, and so on, and ask those questions so that you understand who your audience is and who the supervisor's goals are and so on, because that's going to only help you be even more successful on the project. Now, when the project is completed, yes, you can and should add this to your experience on your resume, LinkedIn, etc. So one nice thing about a micro-internship is because it's project-based, it's usually pretty easy to identify what you did and put it on your resume. So think through that. What was the description, the deliverable, what was the outcome, etc., and draft those bullet points. Make sure you're adding them onto your resume, your LinkedIn profile, and keeping all of that current. Now, when you're putting this experience on your resume, know that, as I said before, you're working for Parker Dewey in this case. So the company name is going to be Parker Dewey. The job title will be either independent contractor, independent consultant, micro-intern. Again, you can use a variety of different things, but the company name is Parker Dewey. And in order to use the name of the organization that you did the project for, you should ask their permission. It doesn't happen too often where they'll say no, but every so often, the student's doing work that may be a little bit sensitive or confidential or what have you, and the company may prefer that you not use their name. Now, can you still put the experience on your resume? Absolutely. And again, you're working for Parker Dewey, so that's how you would list it. And instead of saying that you did the project for, I don't know, Bank of America, you would say instead, large U.S. Financial institution or what have you. So some sort of generic term instead of the company's name. We also have some templates on our that you can check out later on, and we'll send to you upon completion of the project on some best practices for how to list this experience on your resume and LinkedIn, and also to how to request a recommendation from your project supervisor so that the great feedback that you may have received can be shared even more publicly. This is also a really good time to reflect on the experience. Think about what you liked, didn't like about the company, the job, the industry, etc., and that may help to inform your longer-term career goals. And also keep in mind whether or not you liked the micro-internship experience, that person that you did the project for is now an addition to your network. And that's somebody that you can and should stay in touch with, because you just never know when that may be a valuable connection for you long-term. Maybe that particular project didn't materialize into a longer-term opportunity at that moment, but that doesn't mean that 3 or 6 months from now, there may not be another opportunity for you that you might be a great fit for at that particular moment. So just to wrap us up, I want to bring us back to those 5 students that you met earlier, and each of them have been successful micro-internships, and I thought that sharing what they had to say about their experience might be helpful. Certainly we'll go ahead and share these with you so you can read them a little bit more carefully if that's something that interests you. And once again, we do have a number of other student testimonials if you want to see some lengthy stories about the students talking about their experiences. My colleague just put it in the chat, so you're certainly encouraged to check those out. So just to wrap us up, we'll stick around for a few more minutes. If any of you have some final questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat, and we'll be happy to answer them. Given the size of the group, I'd prefer not to open the mic, just again, there could be a lot of background noise, et cetera. So again, if you have questions, please list them in the chat. But just to wrap up, do make sure you can create your account if you haven't done so already. Complete your profile as thoroughly as possible. And then my last piece of advice is one that definitely bears repeating. The successful micro-interns don't just create their accounts, look at the project, maybe apply to one and forget about it. The successful micro-interns are persistent. They're logging in every day or two. They're looking at all the projects and applying with specific customized application responses to as many projects as they find interesting. And they're doing this regularly. Maybe right now is not a very good time for you. Maybe classes just started, midterms are coming up, you're overwhelmed, whatever. If this is not a good time, okay, great. You just spent 30 or whatever minutes with us. Awesome. Table this information and you can always come back and check this out in a few weeks or months when you do have the time. If it's a great time for you, great. You can apply to as many projects as you like. Yes, students work on multiple projects regularly at the same time even, but they are competitive, and the persistent students are the ones who are successful. So that being said, I'm going to go ahead and take a breath and see what's in the chat. But I do want to thank you all for joining us. One last point too is if you want to continue the conversations, we've got an active LinkedIn group that you're welcome to join, and we'll send you a link to it so that you can check it out. But it's designed for career launchers, for folks like you who want to learn more about micro-internships. In that group, not only do students have a chance to share with each other their experiences, but we publish things like our student testimonials and also some of the micro-internship opportunities that might be of particular interest. Maybe the company is hiring lots and lots of students, or maybe they are doing some really, really interesting projects, or this company posted one like the one I just talked about where they had 30 some odd projects or whatever. So those are the kinds of things that we promote in that group, and certainly encourage you to check it out. And oh, thank you, my colleague put it in the chat as well. So that being said, questions that have come up here and there. Let's see, does Parker Dewey provide training opportunities for students and grads? So good question. What we're doing with the micro-internships is we are carefully vetting the projects so that they're appropriate for students and recent grads. And by that, I mean that companies who are posting on the platform, they know that they are not going to be working with students who have 10 to 20 years of industry experience. And in fact, if you do have 10 to 20 years of relevant experience, I'm going to guess this is probably not of interest to you or worth your time, because that's just the nature of the projects. So that being said, these projects are designed so that they really don't require a lot of heavy onboarding or training. It's designed to help you use what you're already learning in classes. If you're seeing projects that you're not as familiar with, that might be because you're not necessarily choosing ones where that align with your academic interests and programs. So keep that in mind. Now, another thing too is that we do provide some collateral around how to approach some of our most common projects, and we certainly will send that to those who are selected for projects, and that may provide some additional help as well. But Danielle, I see you coming off camera. Go ahead. Oh, I can't hear you.
I was going to chime in for the next question about the big deal about whether there's not any experience on your profile or resume posted. For a lot of these experiences, companies are looking to expand their pipeline. So they're open and excited to engage first-year students. Like Kristen mentioned, we had someone who was doing a project before they even got started with their first year. So just in case it helps to hear it from a recruiter themselves, I just shared in the chat a link to a recap from our recent webinar. We had one specifically called Micro-Internships for first and second year students, where a recruiter said, we're not looking for you to have a lot of experience on your resume.
Yep.
Talk about the things you've done in your classes, talk about the things that interest you, talk about the projects you've done in class, but we're not looking for people to come in having a lot of experience, because this is a great way to get that first experience.
Yep.
I also wanted to acknowledge that I did tell Tia that Tia would be able to verbalize their question. Would it be okay if I allowed just Tia to talk?
Of course, yep.
That's my bad. Okay, Tia.
No worries.
Okay, testing 1, 2.
It works. Apologies. Go ahead, Katia.
Okay, so the question I have, it has to do with the experience section. So basically, I'm trying to, okay, so for context, I did a micro internship with Design the Future Digital, and I've been trying to put it in my experience in Parker Dewey, but Parker Dewey won't accept it because, well, it requires for me to put in a state, but I don't know what state Design the Future Digital's HQ is because it's all remote. So I wanted to know if there was a way to bypass this.
Got it. Yeah, the state, I would recommend if it is a remote opportunity in this case, go ahead and just put your physical location. And that is yeah, good question, good point. That's something I want to take to the IT team as well, because that is something that the location feature is one that we are actually evaluating based on some feedback real time. I think there's some pieces of that are going live within the next day or two, actually. So it's very timely questions, Tia. But that also comes up occasionally with folks that may have maybe from an international location or what have you. I know that's something that's part of our IT fix, and I'm not sure if that's up and running quite yet because that's how new it is. But you can always put the location of your school as well for those of you who might be an international student, but your current location is your school, but you can also list that for your hometown if the international option is not working for you. I hope that answers your question, Tia. Randy, great question around if you didn't get selected for the first time, will it hurt your chances? Absolutely not. And that's just the nature of a competitive job market. Whether you're going to not get every job, every micro internship that you apply to. That's just, unfortunately, the nature of the beast, but it certainly does not hurt you. Persistence is key. Just keep on applying. If you do have questions around how to make your applications even stronger, I would encourage you, check out some of the resources that we've mentioned here. I didn't click on all of the available links, but when you get the slides, you'll see a lot of different places that you can click on links. For example, on the slide that has the side-by-side comparison of a student who was selected and a student who wasn't, there's several other examples with some reasons for how a student who wasn't selected could have made their applications even stronger, or their responses even stronger. So I would encourage you to take a look at that as well. And then also your question around, do we provide workshops for building or improving on your resume? No, we don't. As you know, with our partnerships with literally hundreds of colleges and universities, that we're very sensitive to not getting in the way of the advice and or resources that your school is encouraging you to use. But I also recognize that many folks, maybe even some folks on the call, don't have access to career services. Maybe for whatever reason at their institution, or maybe they just can't get to career services, or maybe they've already graduated and don't have access anymore, or what have you. So that being said, certainly you can reach out. I know Danielle put both of our contact information. We both come from a career services background, and I think I can offer Danielle's help on this one too, but I know I would be happy as well to assist and put my career services hat back on and help one-on-one.
And I also put the link in the chat. We do student office hours, and I don't know why we call them hours. It's a half hour once a month, just if folks have quick questions or wants to review short answer responses. And I want to be clear, we can't guarantee time for resume reviews during that time, but if it's a slow half hour and you have time to pop in and we're available, I'd be happy to do it at that time as well.
Great suggestion. All right, I think we may have gotten all of the questions. Danielle, did I miss anything?
No, I think you got them all. You were doing an awesome job of keeping up with the chat.
Well, this has been a very fantastically fun group to join us today. So again, folks, don't be a stranger. If you think of a question later on and you have additional just thoughts and ideas, or ways that that we can be helpful to you all, you will again receive this content later on. But don't be a stranger in the meantime, and above all, good luck.